order. There are no more bill introductions, so we don't have to deal with that. First item on the agenda is a hearing on HB 2158. And the room is buzzing with excitement to get started, so let's start. We'll turn it over to Charles to tell us what the bill does. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. House Bill 2158 pertains to beekeepers and their products of packaged honey and honeycombs. So the bill would permit beekeepers to engage in selling and packaging honey and honeycombs without holding a food establishment or food processing plant license under the Kansas Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. So if you look at the first section of the bill on the first page there, there's a provision right at line 16 that any beekeeper shall be exempt from the requirement to hold a license pursuant to the act I mentioned if such beekeeper meets certain requirements, and those are listed in the bill. First one is honey and honeycombs have to be packaged on the property of the beekeeper. They have to be labeled with certain information, including a designation as honey or honeycomb, the name, address, and zip code of the beekeeper, net weight of the contents, that the beekeeper keeps such honey and honeycombs unaltered and free from additional additives. And unaltered is a defined term. If you look at line 13 of the first page of the bill, it means left raw and in the original state after harvesting, and if applicable, straining. And it also does not include any honey or honeycombs that have been pasteurized. Another requirement is that the hive or hives are in Kansas. The beekeeper's annual gross sales cannot exceed $50,000, and the beekeeper must maintain a record with certain information of the sales of the products, including the amount of honey or honeycombs sold by container size, where they're sold, and the date of the sales. And that information has to be available to the Kansas Department of Agriculture. The second section of the bill amends the food establishment or food processing statute. If you look toward the bottom of the second page of the bill, that statute contains some exceptions to the requirement of a license, and the second section just adds, way at the end on page 4, another exception for a beekeeper who meets the requirements of Section 1 and amendments thereto. This bill would come into effect on July 1st, 2025 if it was enacted, and that is what the bill does.
All right, committee, any questions for the reviser? Vice Chair Turk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Charles, are there any other states in and around our area that have similar legislation?
Representative, I would not know the answer to that question. That could be something that possibly research could look into, or it's possible that some of the conferees might be able to answer that question for you. But we'd be happy to get that information one way or another. So,
looks like Mike's already on it. Any other questions? Representative Osmond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Charles, is there anything in current law about those beekeepers that give away their honey rather than sell it, or is this reference that at all?
No, if you give me some time here, I'll try and take a look in the law about, gifting of products. This pertains to the business of conducting a food establishment or food processing plant. So we're making an exception for that. So without, looking or researching more about this, it would appear that this would not be applicable to people who just gift, a beekeeper that just, gifts honey. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I believe so. Thank you so much.
With further question, Representative Corbett.
Thank you, Chairman. In some states, if you are a beekeeper, it lets you have an ag exemption, so your property would be zoned as ag, whether it's not a large piece of property, but it would affect your taxes, and that's why a lot of them do it. Any comment on that in Kansas?
No, I wouldn't be able to comment on that at this time, but again, that's something that we could look into.
Representative Williams? No question. Any other questions for the revisor? I've got a couple. So Charles, the definition of a small beekeeper, is it just the annual sales of under $50,000, or is there a definition, another definition?
So the bill provides certain requirements for a beekeeper to be exempt. And there may be additional requirements in another section of the law, but with respect to the bill and how, you know, meeting the requirements for an exemption from the requirement of a license under that Kansas Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, those are listed on pages 1 and 2 of the bill. And the only reference to, you know, the nature of the business as far as, you know, financial would be the annual gross sales cannot exceed 50,000. So there isn't anything else in the bill that now there might be something in the Kansas Food and Cosmetic Act, and I'll look through that and see if there is anything.
Okay, so I received an email with some questions on it, and one of them was and you may not be able to answer this, it might have to come from a conferee or even from whoever regulates, maybe Department of Agriculture, but how are they going to track how much sales are? I mean, like if you have a wife and a husband and they each sell $50,000, does that work? I mean, can they break it up in their family with different companies, or is it once? I guess how they keep track of the total of $50,000.
So with respect to the bill, you know, there is that provision on the top of page 2 that the beekeeper must maintain a record of sales. So what's interesting, though, is the record of sales shall include but not be limited to, and I'm, you know, quoting the bill, the amount sold by container size, where they're sold, and the date of such sales. So there actually isn't a specific reference to, you know, a running total of how much you sold or your gross sales. You know, I guess one could kind of assume maybe that would be information that the Department of Agriculture would be interested in, but it isn't specific there.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions? Seeing none. Thanks, Charles. We'll open the proponent testimony. And we have, in the S-Drive, several proponent testimonies. It's unclear on who might be here or who might be written only. One of them did say oral, so we'll call that gentleman up, Samuel McRoberts. Charles.
Chairman, I apologize. I just want to, you know, my last answer I don't think was quite accurate. If you look at line 7, the amount. So amount, you know, probably refers to the amount of money. I mean, one could interpret it that way.
Okay, all right, thank you. Mr. McRoberts, you can make sure your microphone's on with blue dot. Got it.
Is this working now?
Yep.
All right. My name is Sam McRoberts. I am litigation director at Kansas Justice Institute, and we are strongly supporting the intent of this bill. I think that the conferees behind me are the most knowledgeable group in Kansas about this bill. And I think they're going to be able to answer every single one of your questions and let you know that honey is an entirely safe product and that requiring a person to go through the commercial kitchen process, which sometimes costs tens of thousands of dollars, doesn't make sense to be able to sell an already safe product. But in order to answer two questions, it's my impression that if you are giving away bottles of honey, you do not need to have a commercial kitchen and you don't need to have that specialty license, which to me begs the question, if honey is safe enough that you can give it away for free, then why should there be a commercial kitchen requirement if you're selling it? It also raises the question that if honey is a safe product, which I believe the conferees are going to be able to talk to you about, why is there a $50,000 threshold? In my written testimony, I suggested respectfully to this committee that it consider removing the $50,000 threshold. Again, because honey and honeycomb are already safe products, there's no reason to create an arbitrary threshold. I'm happy to stand for questions. I think, though, the conferees behind me are much better equipped to be able to discuss beekeeping and honey. Thank you.
Committee, any questions? Representative Wilcott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the main points on this is the utilization of a commercial rated kitchen. Are there other agricultural products that have that requirement that are also seen as a safe products, whether it's rice or corn or anything, something that's packaged and sold out? Are there other agricultural products that have that requirement?
There are, and there are a number. So the last time I looked through the commercial kitchen requirements was last year and a couple of years ago. There are some things that require commercial kitchens. There are some things that don't. And so a lot of that determines or is based upon kind of how safe the product is. So if a person is selling dried herbs, for example, a commercial kitchen may not be required. If you're selling raw meat, a commercial kitchen is going to be required. And so really it turns on whether or not the product is safe. And so that's why I think it's so important, and respectfully, to listen to the conferees, because they're going to tell you exactly how safe honey and honeycomb is.
So is it your contention that no one in this business, including the big Bs, don't need a commercial kitchen? We could just strike that from the regulations?
It's my contention that this bill is a really good start at doing away with what we believe is an arbitrary and onerous restriction on somebody's right to earn an honest living. And so I think that given how safe honey is, I don't think a commercial kitchen should be required. That's our position.
Good enough. All right. And I'm not seeing any further questions for you. Thanks for coming in today. We do. Representative Kessler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hey, thank you for being here today. I just kind of have a question here because something kind of keeps coming back to me. My wife used to have bees, or actually she still does have bees. Started out with 70 hives, then 50 hives, then 20 hives, and now 2 hives. But I had a friend of mine that made jelly, and he made jelly, sold it at farmer's market. He did it all over the state and did quite well with it. He decided to start making a pepper jelly with jalapenos. Found out that he can't do that. He has to have a commercial kitchen in order to do jalapenos. Is there something correlated here with how come he had to use a commercial kitchen for jalapenos but not sand plums or grapes or anything else? Is there something there also with honey that could kind of transition similar?
So to answer the question about jalapenos, it's my understanding that the Department of Agriculture and the inspectors consider jalapenos to be different because of the acidic level. And so it's their view, and of course they'll be able to answer that far better than I, but it's their view that given the acidic levels of jalapenos, that needs to be regulated differently than other types of food items. Again, previously I talked about things like dried herbs. That presents virtually no health risk. Jalapenos, at least to the government, they consider that unsafe, and that's why they require a commercial kitchen.
Representative King.
Chairman, thank you. I'm in House District 74, which has Barkman honey. Would this bill have any effect on Barkman honey, an international honey manufacturer and seller?
I'm unable to answer that. I'm sorry.
I would think the only thing that would affect it, it might give them a little bit of competition at the local level on the store shelves, but that's just a guess. It's just a guess. All right, anybody else? Seeing none. Okay. Thank you, sir. You're done finally. And, all right, so I have a list of people here. Raise your hands, how many people are going to speak? Looks like three of you. Okay. You guys choose which one goes first and introduce yourself, please. And these are proponents. Yep. If a bee flies out of there, just know some of us are armed.
Chew on it? I've never heard of it. Really? Just like whack it and just chew on it.
This on?
Please introduce yourself.
Is this on? Yep. I'm Buck Bradley. Just to answer a couple questions before I give my testimony. Representative Turk, you asked the question if any other states around us have it. Missouri has the exact same, very similar law on the books that was enacted in 2015. Other states include Arkansas, Connecticut, Hawaii, Illinois, Iowa, Kentucky, Maine, Maryland, Michigan, Minnesota, Mississippi, Missouri, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, South Dakota, Tennessee, Virginia, Washington, and Wisconsin have a very similar law. Maybe their numbers may be different on how much you can sell, or maybe you need a warning label or not, but they do not require a commercial kitchen. Representative Kessler, you had a question about jalapenos. This wouldn't trigger, we wouldn't be able to do that with this bill, because when you add stuff into honey, that changes the pH level. That's why we are purposely not mentioning adding stuff to honey. It's pure, unadulterated honey. That's one reason it doesn't talk about that in there, in the bill. Any other questions before I begin?
Go ahead and go through your presentation first.
Chairman and members of the committee, you guys received my testimony and accompanying PowerPoint that I created. I'd like to take this opportunity to highlight a couple of key points of my written testimony and provide you all with some important information to consider. One of the main issues I address you today is that the current regulation has restricted the growth of my business. I've been asked to place my honey in 2 retail stores, and under existing law, I cannot legally do so. Revenue is vital to any small business to survive, and without a permanent location to sell honey in a retail setting, it limits my growth. I've served 21 years in the Marine Corps. I followed, enforced, and later wrote regulations. I understand the importance of well-crafted regulations, but I also believe those regulations need to be logical and necessary, and this is not. The law that currently governs honey sales is an example of security theater. It is a regulation that creates an unnecessary burden on small beekeepers without improving the public safety. To remind you, the current legislation under existing law, I can sell honey directly to anybody in this room under cottage industry laws. I can also sell bulk honey to bakeries, brewers, packers, perfectly 100% legal. However, I cannot sell that same bottle of honey in those businesses under the current law. Of note, I want to be noted, I am also currently working on a commercial kitchen so I can, regardless if this bill passes or not, and I fully intend to have it certified by the end of the year, but I still believe this regulation remains a roadblock to many beekeepers in my community who lack the resources to invest in this type of infrastructure. Why is this regulation security theater? The Kansas Department of Health and Environment has never reported a foodborne illness linked to honey. In their statement to me, raw honey, and I quote, raw honey is shelf-stable, because its properties inhibit bacterial growth. The only foodborne risk that we look for in honey is infant botulism. Because of the spores can survive in honey, and because infant botulism in children less than 1 year old. The agency has not had a reported case of infant botulism in the past 5 years, and that is of 2023. Two, of note, CDC, American Academy of Pediatrics, and the National Honey Board advise feeding honey to infants under the age of 12. This is something many parents are familiar with, along with other foods, milk, peanut butter, stuff of that nature. Neither the federal government or Kansas requires a warning label about infant botulism on honey. If infant botulism was a significant concern, the Kansas Department of Agriculture, which would inspect my facility commercial kitchen, does not sample my honey for infant botulism when they come and do the inspection. Finally, the KDA only focuses on the bottling process. not the extraction process. Of note, you guys seen the honeycomb that I passed around here. I cannot legally sell that in a store. And all I do is I pull that out of my hive, freeze it for 48 hours, let it thaw out, put those tops on and put a sticker on there. I need a commercial kitchen to do that. Currently, if I want to bottle honey, here's a honey bucket. 3-inch drop is all they're concerned about, from the honey bucket to the bottle. I remove those bottles from a sealed bag. I remove the cap from a sealed bag. I'm, got my hairnet on and all the other good stuff, and nice stretch gloves as I go through and do that. They're all worried about that 3-inch drop. Why this regulation is a barrier to small business? It's cost prohibited. The average retail bottle that most of you have, I've delivered all the bottles around your guys' office today, that retails at $10. The initial inspection for a commercial kitchen starts at $550 with an annual fee of $250. It is estimated to complete a food compliance kitchen ranges anywhere from $5,000 to $30,000, depending on the facilities you already have. The primary driver of the cost is needing for a separate facility dedicated to the solely bottling and storage of the honey. You need power, you need water, and you need sewage and a 3-compartment sink. That's what you need. It limits access, and also some people people oppose this bill, will tell you that I can go to a commercial kitchen, I can do all that, or commercial kitchen, incubated kitchen, and do it there. To rent a commercial kitchen or incubated kitchen in Kansas is not practical. The same registration fee of $550 and the annual renewal fee still applies if I rent a commercial kitchen under the KDA laws right now. According to the KDA Resilient Food Systems Infrastructure Grant request for applications that just came out in 2024, Kansas, and they stated, Kansas lacks food processing facilities and existing commercial kitchens are normally fully booked and unavailable in certain regions. Of note, there are only 22 licensed or commercial kitchens in the entire state. And also, the regulatory disadvantage of Kansas beekeepers. It's my understanding of the current law and in conversations with the KDA, Kansas defaults to the state of origin for food safety regulations. And since Missouri in 2015 eliminated their regulations, Missouri beekeepers can sell honey in a retail setting without a commercial kitchen, while Kansas beekeepers cannot. At least, and like I said, at least 20 other states have similar exemptions, leaving Kansas beekeepers at a competitive advantage, or competitive disadvantage, excuse me. Conclusion, food safety is a priority for all beekeepers, primarily those who would benefit from this bill. No beekeeper wants their honey to look bad, contain bee parts, wax, have sticky residue on the bottle. Most beekeepers, when they bottle honey, don't know if it's going to you, their family, or to a guest. So we all take great care in extracting and bottling of the honey. And you know what? And my business isn't going to grow if I give people bad honey. House Bill 2158 removes unnecessary barriers and aligns Kansas regulations with the common sense food safety practices, and I urge the committee to support the bill and help small businesses like mine grow. Thanks for your consideration.
Committee, any questions for the Comfrey?
Yes, sir.
Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One quick question. Being a industry expert, can you tell me the benefits of local honey? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's believed that local honey will help with resistance to allergies and stuff. That's believed. There's really no scientific proof of that. However, honey is also used to inhibit, it's been used for wounds and stuff on medicine. Anything else honey's used for that you guys, that I'm drawing a blank on? Locally, yep. Medication, allergies. Yep. Yep.
Thank you.
Representative Kessler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hey, you kind of brought up a good point when you were first addressing some of our questions here, but yeah, does anything in here, because I don't see it in here, cover anything about flavored honey? Because I've seen lots of flavored honey, peppered flavored honey.
This is 100% pure, raw, local honey.
And that's all we're talking about.
If you go and do creamed honey, cinnamon honey, hot honey, you have to get a commercial kitchen license. Because you potentially change the pH level of the honey, which is something that probably needs to trigger a commercial kitchen license.
Thank you.
Representative Corbett.
Yes, sir. So what does it cost you for compliance now, the way you are for just your annual licensing or whatever?
No, sir.
You do? Nothing?
Nope, just I register with the state of Kansas every 2 years. So whatever it costs for a business license.
That should be enough.
Representative Kessler.
Sorry, I just thought of another one. Hey, so I remember when my wife was a new beekeeper, had to learn some hard lessons here and there. I remember one of her first times she bottled some honey. The moisture content was way too high. I mean, we had some honey that we didn't notice for quite a while that fermented in the jar. I mean, we had all kinds of issues. But I mean, is there anything, I mean, you guys are all professional, seasoned beekeepers. You understand what you're doing, but there certainly are probably people out there that don't. I know we certainly did not when we first started doing bees, but I mean, is there something there, a check and balance that would kind of maybe overlook that? Because that would be kind of horrible if somebody just started raising bees this is their first harvest and they mess things up, but yet they can still get it on a shelf somewhere.
Technically, the definition of honey has to be 18.6% moisture content or below. So technically, if it's below that, it should never ferment. However, if it does, somebody bottles it above that level, you're on your way to making mead, is what you're doing. So any points you guys want to add on that one? It's going to ferment. You're going to know, just like anything else, you're going to know pretty quick when you open up a bottle that it's fermented.
What I'm saying is there's nothing preventing someone from making those mistakes and putting them on a retail shelf somewhere.
No, there's nothing to prevent a commercial kitchen from doing the same thing.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Wilcott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as you were talking, you had said that the natural honey that you produce, there's really only one hazard or health hazard that's known to be with that, which is botulism.
Infant botulism.
Infant botulism. Whether it's in producing a commercial kitchen or a non-commercial rated kitchen, that risk is the same in both of those scenarios?
Risk is the same. It's just like, it's like the infant's guts are not available to handle that type of botulism. It's just like when you have a young child, you can't feed them certain food until they're a certain age because their gut biome hasn't matured enough to be able to handle certain type of foods. That's why you can't feed honey. That's one reason you can't feed honey, because their body can't handle that if infant botulism is in the honey.
And in those commercial kitchen settings, are there regulatory tests or anything that you measure to help mitigate that?
No, when the KDA comes out to inspect, I've done 2 pre-inspections. When they come out to inspect, they're not testing my honey whatsoever. They're making sure I got a 3-compartment sink and certain things are done.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, can you repeat what your name was again so we can?
Buck Bradley.
Okay. And you've submitted testimony?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Next up.
Go ahead. I'm on the other side, so.
Mm-hmm.
I know. That's why I'm sitting on this side of the aisle.
You're such a mess. Know him well. He's a good guy. My name is Becky Tipton. I'm the current president of the Kansas Honey Producers. Kansas Honey Producers is our state association that represents beekeepers of all levels and abilities. We have commercial beekeepers as part of our membership. We have novice beekeepers as part of our membership. And I would really like to talk about maybe what this bill might do in the beekeeping world. Since World War II, the number of beekeepers in the United States has dropped about half. And that's happened because of our change in our farming practices and many things. Honey was the sweetener. It was every farm had a few hives because they would provide the sweetener for the people on the farm. We don't farm that way anymore. And yet we still need bees desperately to do pollination work. And we estimate that in Kansas we have about 6,000 hives, but that really varies. And when the USDA took the survey of how many hives were here, and they don't count anybody with less than 5 hives. So the little bitty beekeepers, they don't even count. So they say that we do literally billions of dollars of increased ag revenue attributed to honeybee pollination every year. And that doesn't count to home gardens or even in nature and how nature benefits, because the fruits and vegetables that feed the birds and the squirrels and all of that come from honeybee pollination as well. So our little honeybees do a lot of work for a lot of people. How does that relate to this bill? if the smallest farmers can find a reliable outlet for their produce, they might need to have a few more hives. They might grow the industry. It is an expensive hobby. Well, it's not expensive like a bass boat or golfing, but it's an expensive hobby nonetheless. And so to do that, they could recoup some of their investment. It's a compelling hobby. It's one that will test your brain for your whole life. And truly, these people love it. But it's one that would be better if they could get just a little bit of compensation for it. A friend of mine, a woman named Julie Chahoy, keeps bees in Atwood, Kansas. In this last year, she had 3 separate businesses come to her and say, Julie, you have beautiful honey. Would you please could we put a little display of it by the cash register in our store? And Julie said, it would get you and me both in trouble. Let's not do that. Because she does not have a commercial kitchen. And guess what? In Atwood, Kansas, there isn't a commercial kitchen that she could lease. So this bill stands to benefit most our smallest communities, our people that are most remote, to be able to help the beekeeper sell their product, help the consumer have a wonderful, healthful, pure, raw Kansas honey, and help the community, maybe with a little bit of sales tax on the end of that. So we have a real benefit, and then maybe more pollinators. There was something I wanted to add. You asked a question about infant botulism. Do you have any more, was your question answered sufficiently?
Yes, it was.
Okay. It is one of those things. I have seen
Representative Wilcott.
recipes. I have seen recipes for baby formula using honey as the sweetener in baby formula. So over the decades, we have given a lot of babies honey, and they have handled it just well. But now we try to err on the side of caution, and so honey is not given to infants. Generally, it's between 12, 18 months in that. It's the same reason we don't feed babies raw strawberries, because infant botulism is present in soil. And so, well, my kids were crawling around on the floor and eating almost anything at 6 months, so honey probably wouldn't have hurt them. But, you know, we want to err on the side of caution for that. So that's the concern. And there was one other question, I'm not sure. Well, we'll get to that later. Do you have questions of me?
Committee, is there any questions? Representative Laura Williams.
Thank you. I mostly just wanted to say I've always wanted to be a beekeeper, but my city doesn't allow for it. One day I will be. But your organization, how many do you represent the beekeepers in Kansas? How many members are a part of your organization?
How many are members of the Kansas Honey Producers?
Yeah.
Of the Kansas Honey Producers, I think about 250 are members right now. The Northeast Kansas Beekeepers, which meets regularly in Lawrence and kind of the Northeast section of the state, has about 600 members, and we have a Facebook following of several thousand.
Do you know off the top of your head how many of your members would benefit from this piece of legislation?
Oh, that would be a really hard question. No, because honestly, they do a lot of what we have talked about here today. They give their honey away, or maybe they sell it in a bucket to another beekeeper if they have really a lot of surplus. And in all honesty, some of them probably are selling it without benefit of legal representation. Yeah, that's not, it gets done, but that's, most of them, they give away a lot of honey.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So you compared the cost of the hobby to a bass boat and golfing. Does your husband have a bass boat and go golfing a lot?
Oh, no, he keeps bees.
Okay. I thought maybe you're taking a jab there, because my wife would have taken the opportunity for sure.
We have others that I kind of go, oh, yeah. I think those hobbies would be a lot of fun. I'm sorry, if you've ever seen anyone that's been working bees in a bee suit when it's 90 degrees outside and sweating like you've never sweat before in your life, you go, having fun yet? It's a good hobby.
Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm also interested, why the $50,000 limit?
You know what? As far as I'm concerned, that's a real arbitrary amount, and I don't know why that was chosen. I was not part of that discussion. I know that they hoped to make this bill more appealing to legislators by saying, we're targeting small beekeepers. We want to benefit small beekeepers. What makes a small beekeeper, or how do you identify a small beekeeper? Well, in the honey industry, they do it with numbers of hives. And if you have 5 hives, you're a hobbyist, you're a hobby beekeeper. If you keep somewhere between 5 and about 50 hives, maybe even up a little higher than that, you're considered a serious sideliner. And a serious sideliner is somebody who would like to make money by selling honey products. And they probably do farmers markets, and they probably do craft fairs, and they probably do other activities to make money from their beekeeping hobby. Above about 100 hives, and in some cases a lot higher than that, they will consider a commercial beekeeper. And that's somebody who's trying to make a living off of keeping bees. Why the $50,000 limit was put in there, I don't know. I would have liked to have seen it more based on hives. If you have 200 or fewer hives, then you can do this. But that's just because that's how the industry works.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Vice Chair Turk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so a hive is determined by a single queen or a box, or how is a hive defined?
The hive is, the vocabulary of beekeeping is kind of interesting sometimes because we really call the whole thing a colony. This is a colony of bees, and it generally has 1 queen and more than 10,000 bees and fewer than 100,000 bees. That's about the size of a colony, and they are in a hive, which is often how we refer to the box. But some people go, I got 6 hives out there, and they mean the box is the bees and the whole thing. So it is a little confusing.
All right, I'm not seeing any further questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. I hope you'll consider this.
Right, and so are there any other proponents that want to speak today? All right, we'll close testimony on proponents, and there are other written ones that are in the S drive. We're to the opponents. Are there any opponents? Introduce yourself, sir.
Since we got it, I'm just taking away from the chat while I talk. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Matthew Brandis. My wife and I own a small farm and apiary in Wellsville, Kansas, not far from here. We have a beekeeping business. I'm going to answer one question. You said that you couldn't keep bees in your city. There's the man you need to talk to right there, Mr. McRoberts.
We can change that in this bill, too.
Yeah. As you can tell, I'm actually here to oppose this bill, much to the chagrin of my fellow beekeepers, most of which these guys are friends of mine, at least they were until today. Just as a bit of a background, like I said, my wife and I have been keeping bees about 8 years. We sell at local farmers markets, at fall festivals. We sell a little bit of wholesale because we do hold a food processor license. We've been doing that for the last 3 years. We have that food processor license. Myself, I'm an EAS master beekeeper. I hold a master beekeeper certificate from the University of Montana, and I'm also the vice president of our club, Northeast Kansas Beekeepers Association. But my position today is my personal one, not of the club. You know, food safety is an important part of our supply, right? Consumers expect when they go to a store and buy something that it's been inspected, it's been packaged, it's been processed in a safe manner. There's just that inherent expectation. And so when we talk about honey, it's been mentioned a lot today. Honey in and of itself is a safe product. Don't deny that. It's actually medicinal. It's been shown, Manuka honey, you've probably heard of Manuka honey before. It actually has medicinal properties. That doesn't negate the fact that during the storage and handling and processing of honey that it can't be contaminated. I passed around a picture. I did not go seeking out this picture, believe it or not. It popped up on my Facebook feed a couple of years ago. I kept it. It's of an individual that is literally bottling honey in his tractor shed on the floor using a Homer's bucket, which, by the way, is from Home Depot, non-food grade bucket, dirty as can be. Now, do I think that that's how most beekeepers bottle their honey? No, I don't. I really don't. But that exposure risk exists, right? What if a mouse poops in that honey, or a bird, has a dropping, or an insect crawls in there? You run the risk of that contamination. So if that picture alone doesn't kind of scare you a little bit, it really should. No documented safety issues. They've brought up that have been no documented. Is that because we already have laws and processes in place to support a food safe product? And it was also mentioned, if you approve this bill and allow honey, what other food products today have a commercial requirement that are going to come to you and say, okay, I'm just making this up, ketchup. Ketchup's never had a food safety issue in Kansas. Does that mean food ketchup gets a pass on having a commercial kitchen? So just kind of think of the potential implications of that going down the road. We mentioned botulism as a potential honey risk. He mentioned fermentation. That is a potential risk. If a beekeeper doesn't know what they're doing, if they are a new beekeeper, they run the risk of bottling honey with too high of a moisture count, and you run that risk of fermentation, which is the other reason you can't put jalapenos in honey, because you're introducing moisture to the honey. So that is a definite risk. There's no labeling requirements in this bill to tell the consumer that this product was produced inside of a facility that was not subject to the laws and regulations today. So those are kind of the food safety risks. If you want to look past that, I understand, but let's talk about some economics here a little bit as well. $50,000 is not small scale. I mean, that's a salary, that's an income for somebody. That's not a hobby. As you heard today, $10 a pound, that's 5,000 pounds of honey. That's a lot of exposure, 5,000 pounds of honey. It'll take 100 colonies to produce, in the neighborhood, depending on the year, 100 colonies to produce that amount of honey. That's not hobby, right? I will make a small correction in the business. Anything up to 50 is usually considered hobby. 50 and above is considered sideliner. And if you're 250 and beyond, that's considered commercial. So you are well in the territory of a sideline beekeeping business if you have 100 hives and you're producing 5,000 pounds of honey. And if that's the case, then you need to have a business, you need to have the insurance, and you need to have the commercial kitchen to support that. Existing channels. There's a lot of avenues out there today for beekeepers to sell their honey. It's called direct to consumer. Beekeepers can sell as much as they want directly to the consumer. I could sell to every one of you in this room as much as I want, as long as that relationship exists, right? Friends, family, coworkers, farmers markets, fall festivals is one of our biggest things. We go to festivals in the fall, sell a lot of honey there. If you have bulk honey, if you've got too much honey, you can sell it to other beekeepers. You can sell it to a bakery. There's a lot of avenues that exist today to market that honey. And this really, it'll open up the doors for a few, but if that size, you already have avenues of doing that. Unfair disadvantage, there's a lot of us that have invested a lot of money in building certified kitchens, KDA licensed food processors. Tim Urich here in Topeka, Tea Creek Bees, has just built a $100,000 honey house. Chad Gilliland in Leavenworth has just bought a building in downtown Leavenworth and is building out a honey business there, and a micro kitchen to allow other beekeepers to come and bottle and process their honey for sale in a commercial environment. I can't testify on their behalf, but I can tell you they're also both opposed to this. And just kind of a few other things, empowering small business. If you're a business, if you're in this to be a business, then you need to be able to follow the rules and the regulations for that. If you're a hobby, there's a lot of outlets for that. If you're truly in it to make money, to have a business, you need to meet all the requirements. Competition from neighboring states, there isn't any. There may be a few. There are no Missouri beekeepers that I've ever seen coming over to Kansas selling their honey in a small form. There are some larger ones that, like at Walmart, you'll see Cooper's Honey, who's out of Missouri. They are at a commercial scale coming over here and selling, but you're not seeing that. There's no competition from other states coming in here and underselling us. So my position is that you need to oppose this, that the regulations are there in place. So happy to answer any questions.
Committee, any questions? Representative Wasinker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I hate to jump on you, but
That's okay. I'm going to get jumped when I leave.
I very much do not like rules and regulations.
Okay?
We have a proliferation of rules and regs in the state of Kansas. We're probably the second highest state of regulated state in the nation. And for me, as someone whose husband buys honey on a regular basis, everywhere I go, I buy honey. Every farmer's market, every downtown market, anywhere I go, anytime I see local honey, I buy it. If you're really concerned about people selling things at farmers markets and things like that, you don't care about those. Why are you worried about the people that want to sell a few at a grocery store? I would love that. I think we need to let people do what they want to do. And I understand that we have to protect people in large scale. But in small scale, I can guarantee you that when I buy it at a farmer's market, I don't think, I wonder where they bottled it. What we're trying to get are the things for the allergens in the area that will help my family feel better. So if you don't care about those, why suddenly do you want to hold them back? I don't quite understand why this is so
Well, some of it
so
is when you go to a
dangerous.
farmer's, sorry, are you done? When you go to a farmer's market, you're building that relationship. You know the person, you're literally, when you buy it from me, you know that. Now, you're right. You don't know if you bought it from the guy. Absolutely correct. I'm not going to argue with that. I'm totally not going to argue with that. But I also feel like in a large commercial setting, when you walk into a Price Chopper or Hy-Vee, I think the standards tend to be a little bit higher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Laura Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I don't know if you'll have the answer to this question and with the bill as a whole, but as we're looking at the KDA food processor license, that allows you to sell wholesale. So
Yes.
and you sell wholesale, correct?
I do a very small, yes, I do a very small of wholesale. I sell at the dairy that's just up the road from me. They sell whole milk off the farm, and I sell them, they resell my honey. There's a restaurant in Paola that resells my honey. So yeah, I do a very small amount. The majority of what we sell is actually through farmers markets and festivals, but we do sell wholesale.
Okay.
I haven't reached the level of, I only keep 40 hives. I'm a very small, by some standards, I'm very small. I don't have that, I'm not quite to that level of being able to supply large volumes of honey to a large, like a Price Chopper or Hy-Vee. But yes, we do wholesale.
And do you know, like a Price Chopper or Hy-Vee, do they have more stricter requirements when it comes to selling honey that goes outside of this bill?
Absolutely, yeah. Again, Tea Creek Bees here in Topeka, he sells through a lot of the local grocery stores. They're going to have requirements for insurance, liability insurance and business registration and things like that. Yeah, they're the larger, the Price Choppers or the commercial places are going to have a lot higher requirements.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sounds like there's already significant barriers to entry as it is. And so don't know how much of a threat it would be to your business. Which one of these beekeepers behind you is going to compete with you on a little grocery store?
Mr. Bradley, actually, is in my backyard.
Oh, okay, well, that explains a lot. All right, I'm going to move on.
I tell people,
Representative Kessler, go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just was kind of curious. I mean, I read your testimony, but I kind of just ignored the whole 40 colony thing here. But I thought it was a little bit larger scale. But I was just going to ask you if all the honey you produce, even out of your commercial kitchen, is it all raw honey, or do you pasteurize any of that, or what's yours?
All honey, all of our honey is raw.
Yeah, awesome. But I just was
Yeah,
kind of curious.
we do raw honey. We've recently started doing some creamed honeys, but no, everything that we sell is raw.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Representative King. Representative Corbett.
Thanks, Chairman. Even if you have a commercial kitchen, just like anybody else, you could still have screw-ups, correct?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I'll even give you an example. I wholesale some honey through a chiropractor in Kansas City. One of her customers reached out to me and said my honey, when she ate it, it actually made her mouth tingle. And it kind of freaked me out, quite honestly. I thought, uh-oh, I thought I had fermented honey. I went and I retrieved the bottle from her. I replaced it. She wanted a replacement. I retrieved it. I brought it home. I measured the honey content level, the moisture level. It was fine. It was 16%. She was having some sort of oral reaction to the honey. So no, there's nothing, to answer your question, you're still gonna have potential mess ups. But I'm bottling my honey in a clean environment where, it's not gonna run the risk of contamination.
I think this bill seems like it wants to kind of start out and try to increase the small beekeeper to get into it. And they can be in the agritourism part of it. But as long as I've been alive, I've never seen a recall on honey, no matter who made it. So
No, agreed.
I think it's a pretty safe deal.
I'll admit, again, honey is a very, very safe product. Won't argue with that.
Vice Chair Turk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think that as this bill's written, it might mitigate your fear there, given that if we pass this bill through, that it says in order to sell their honey in the capacity for which they're asking, that they have to have all of their personal information on it, where it's bottled, what their address is, et cetera, et cetera. So if they experience what you experienced, the consumer can then do the same thing.
Sure.
Correct?
Yeah, by Kansas law, there are certain labeling laws that you have to meet. Even if I'm not a licensed food processor, we all have certain labeling laws with our name and contact information and phone number, in case there is something that happens that you need to be able to contact the beekeeper.
It sounds
Absolutely.
like this legislation answers your fear there. Thanks.
Representative Wilcott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you have a commercial kitchen that comes with an annual license fee that you end up paying the state. Can you walk us through, I assume that also comes with an inspection from the state? Can you walk us through what an inspection do they look at your packaging equipment? Can you kind of share with us what that looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got my license 3 years ago. KDA is great. I contacted them prior to getting my license to have them come out and look at the facility that I wanted to put the kitchen in. And they gave me a list of the things that I needed to do: explosion-proof lights, the 3-bay sink, all the things. So that I built the kitchen according to their standard. And then when they came out, they go through and they look at how you store things, where chemicals are stored. Do you have for dishwashing, you have to have the test strips and things like that. With honey, they don't do an annual inspection. They do about every 2 to 3 years if you're just doing honey. So I just had my second inspection, just 2 months ago. She comes out, she looks at the documentation. We have to maintain a pest log. She looks at the sink. She wants to see, do I have the proper bleach? Believe it or not, there's different kinds of bleach. I had to change the bleach that I had on the shelf because there's a label that says for food products, for food sanitation, and the bottle of bleach I had didn't have that. Fortunately, I had another bottle that did have that law. 2 different bottles of bleach, one was acceptable, one was not. So they go through the details and just looking at how you're storing your bottles. We all buy bottles that are in bulk. You have to store those in food-safe containers as well. So there's just a whole list of things that they go down, and they make recommendations. Hey, you might want to think about lock control, like doing lock codes on your honey. So if there's ever a recall, that you can go back and do that. So go ahead.
So it's a generic inspection, or do they do anything specific to honey?
They did not do anything specific to honey. It was actually interesting, the particular inspector that came out, I did a little bit of education with her because she was not aware of the moisture, the honey content of moisture. So we had a little bit of back and forth and dialogue, and she actually followed up with me later after the inspection asking about that. Because today they aren't checking for moisture content in the honey. It's more to it's to the point. It's, do you have the sinks? Are you doing things in a sanitary way?
Just on clarification,
Sure.
So there's nothing really with a commercial kitchen that's unique or specific to the honey industry that they're kind of going after. It's just a very generic, here's a commercial kitchen and here's why we do it.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Representative Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question. Would you feel more comfortable with this bill if it was at a lower dollar amount?
Yes.
Okay, because I am also a small business owner, and I'm all for not putting more regulations on them, but I think we're opening a can of worms here with just what could potentially come out of this, we're not experts on Food and Drug Administration, but that's my thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. Our president of our club's in the room today. She lives here in Topeka, and she just recently got her food processor license, but she sells at Barb's Barn here in Topeka. If I don't have anything against necessarily, a small amount of honey being sold, there need to be an outlet. But when you start selling 5,000 pounds, 10,000 pounds of honey, your exposure goes way up, in my opinion.
I just wanted to, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to add, I'm all for supporting small farm, family, local business, rural community. I just think the $50,000 level is way much higher than that.
And I'd rather see, if you choose to move forward to this or you modify it, I would rather see it more on a volume level, not a dollar level. Because, the price of honey changes. Now, fortunately for beekeepers, it's going up and not going down. I think there's a few in the room that probably used to sell honey at $4 or $5 a pound, and now it's $10 a pound. But to me, it makes more logical sense to sell at a certain volume, not at a dollar level. If the honey doubles, now you're able to sell less honey. But let's set if you want to do a sideliner, if you produce 1,000 pounds, or that's your limit.
Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What's your limit then? What's the dollar figure that you'd be comfortable with?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily, again, I wouldn't do a dollar figure. I would do more of a volume in pounds, right? Because a dollar figure can fluctuate. I would do something more, if you want to go by the, typically what's referred to as a standard in the beekeeping is 50 colonies of bees produces 50 to 60 pounds of honey. So if you could do the math, me personally, I would say 1,000 or 1,500 pounds of honey per year. That's, that's would be my take on it. Above that, you're venturing into that territory where you're kind of producing enough of an income to justify potentially having a kitchen.
All right, thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Representative Osmond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So on that topic, as we start to discuss dollars and volume, what is the average yield from a beehive in a given year?
It certainly varies every year. We are farmers just like the crop farmers are. I would say on average 60 pounds. Would anybody?
I think the state average is 67 pounds.
Yeah, state average is 67 pounds. There's some colonies that will produce 200 pounds. There's some colonies that will produce 10 pounds. Zero, yeah. I would say, typically 60 to 70 pounds. It used to, frankly, it used to be a lot higher, but with modern agriculture, we've killed off a lot of the flowers and the forage that bees typically use, but 60 pounds.
All right, I'm not seeing any further questions for you, sir. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, I appreciate it.
Is there any other person that wishes to be an opponent today? Anyone that wants to be neutral? All right, well then we be done.
That's great.
Oh my God.
I close the hearing on this. Thanks everybody for coming in today and testifying. All right, committee, we're going to try to pass out a couple of bills that we've already heard. And I believe we're going to start with 2117, one of the Secretary of State's bills. And I'm just realizing that I typed out a text to the reviser and never hit send. So I just hit send. So now you know what we're going to work, sir. I apologize, Charles. We'll give you a second to look it up. We're going to try to do 2117, 2118, and then the trail bill, whatever that was, the one you gave me the amendment on, 2035. We'll start with 2117.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. So I believe the committee will recall House Bill 2117 was brought to you by the Secretary of State. It deals with business entities, primarily with certain filing requirements. Filing requirements for business trusts for foreign corporations. There was also a section that deals with professional corporations or limited liability companies and permitting them to participate in transactions under the Business Entity Transactions Act. There was a section that provided that certain information by registered agents that's filed with Secretary of State that is now not a public record would become a public record. It modifies certain filing requirements and fees for also for limited partnerships. That's what the bill does.
Any questions for the reviser? All right, seeing none. Any discussion on 2117? All right, seeing none, Vice Chair Turk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the committee pass out House Bill 2117 favorably. Thank you.
Okay. I need a second on that. Representative Ward. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of passing out 2117 favorably, say aye. Aye. All against, say no. Motion passes. We'll talk about 2118 now, and Reviser Reimer.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. The committee will recall that 2118 was also a bill brought to you by the Secretary of State. This bill deals with consumer protection, specifically businesses that provide a service of filing or retrieving documents from the government, including the federal government, state government, and local government. And the bill requires provides a number of regulatory provisions with respect to those provisions with respect to those businesses, including requirements with respect to solicitations, and also that violation of those requirements would be an offense under the Consumer Protection Act.
Any questions for the reviser? All right, seeing none, Vice Chair Turk.
Bus number 2. I move that the Committee on Commerce pass out Bill number 2118 favorably.
Need a second. Representative Ward. You've heard the motion. All in favor, say aye. All against, say no. Motion passes. All right, so now we'll focus on Bill 2035. Reviser Reimer.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. This bill was brought to you by Representative Proctor. It deals with agritourism, specifically with the manner of taxation of agritourism, the property taxation. So it changes the definition of agritourism to specifically include ranching activity, including trail rides, or actually it's ranching activity that we are changing, and we're adding to, language to ensure that that would include trail rides. And that would permit that to be classified as a ranching activity, therefore an agritourism activity, and therefore be eligible for property taxation as agricultural land.
Any questions for the reviser? All right, I'm not seeing any. There was a technical amendment that was suggested by the reviser. Charles, you want to touch on that?
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. So I can pass that out if you would permit, or should I just discuss it first?
Why don't you just discuss it? It
Okay.
seems pretty easy, but if any member wants a copy, we can get you one.
So what this amendment would do would be to add a section to the bill, specifically KSA 321432. That is the definition section from the Agritourism Promotion Act. And the proposed amendment would change the definition section with respect to the definition of agritourism activity. If you look at 2035, there is a definition of agritourism activity in 2035, and that definition is exactly the same as the definition of agritourism activity for purposes of the Agritourism Promotion Act. So the proposed amendment would make the same change, that is, changing with respect to ranching activities to include trail rides, adding that phrase, to include trail rides, in the definition of agritourism activity for purposes of that act. Now, the benefit of what the Agritourism Promotion Act does is it provides for persons engaged in those kinds of business activities to register with the Secretary of Commerce. That provides, as an agritourism business, that provides a couple of advantages. One is that the Secretary of Commerce will engage in advertising for those registered businesses. The other is that there's a limitation on liability that comes with registering as an agritourism business. So that is what this proposed amendment would do, and I'd be happy to pass out copies of the amendment if the committee would.
All right, any questions on the amendment, or would any member like a copy of the amendment? Representative Melton would like, just go ahead and hand them out, I guess. Representative Osman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as a technical point, who is bringing the amendment?
I'll bring it. We're discussing it right now, but okay. somebody, we'll get there.
Right,
do you want to bring it?
Not at this point. Thank you.
All right, any questions? None yet. Go ahead and review it. Representative Osman.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would like to bring an amendment forth for consideration.
All right, seconded by Representative Poskin. You just killed it. Any discussion on the amendment or any questions? Representative Christy Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just for fun, would that include wagon rides?
So potentially, if they would be on a trail, if they would be on a trail.
Any further questions? All right, Representative Osman, you can close.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I close and move my amendment.
You all heard the motion. All in favor say aye. Against say no. Oh. Motion passes. Congratulations, Representative Osman. That might be the first amendment you've gotten on in this room. All right. Any other discussion on the amendment? All right, seeing none. Yeah, for the record, Representative, that was not a unanimous.
Yeah.
Vice Chair Turk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to move the bipartisan House Bill number 2035 out of this committee favorably.
As amended.
As amended.
Seconded by Representative Wassinger. No further discussion. All in favor say aye. All against say no. Motion passes. All right, that's all we got for today. Want to give you guys a heads up on Friday. I don't know if you saw the agenda, but it looks like it's going to be a pretty good discussion. We're going to have Chancellor Gerard and AD Voss in here to talk about, or Goff in here to talk about NIL and the challenges that it's presenting, along with the recent lawsuit that the students just won for revenue sharing and how that's going to affect the university. So it'll be a good discussion. So we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks.